James Muldoon, and with Tech Top Motors. We're here at the EASA 2024 in Las Vegas, Nevada. We this year are displaying our Elite 8, which is one Tech Top motor and 7 of our competitors here. They're all cross sections so that you can see the difference in the construction between what the rest of the industry is doing and the advancements Tech Top is making with our product. This product that we have here today is the XR3 cast iron 15 horsepower 4-pole motor. In the basic features, starting with the electrical system here, it is a full H-class product, including everything on the motor, including the leads, which are actually a silicon with a glass impregnation on the exterior of the silicon. That allows for these leads to be very flexible, but still be able to be abrasion resistant and meet the H-class requirements. Inside the junction box, we'll see a nipple seal. Each one of the leads fits in through the nipple, so as the leads are moved inside the box, it doesn't lose the seal going into the motor to keep moisture out of the motor. You'll see the protection, the glass tubing protection that goes from the box all the way up to the head of the coil head. Now, one of the primary advantages to a Tech Top product, this is a lap wound, hand inserted product. It is not concentric wound. It is not machine inserted. The coating that you see on here is actually tropicalization. It's not the varnish. It's for reducing bacterial growth on the coils. Our entire product line is vacuum impregnated rather than a dip and bake or trickle, which greatly improves the motor's ability to survive on a VFD. Internally on this motor, you'll see that there's actually a grounding brush on the inside of the motor. Hard to see in the videos, but the grounding brush actually grounds the shaft to the ground so that any of the common mode currents that are caused by the VFD don't damage the bearing. From a mechanical standpoint, it's a full cast iron motor. Double cast iron bearing retainers on both sides, cast iron end plates, of course, full cast iron junction box, and the fan cover as well is cast iron. For the fan cover, unlike most of our competitors, the cast iron fan cover is mounted not with bolts coming in from the side. And the reason that is because when you do that, you tend to put tension into the junction, into the fan cover, and then when it gets hit, it's more likely to get cracked. The bolts that are holding on the end plate of this motor on this side are actually a hex that have a threaded hole in the back. So the bolts there are axial to the fan cover. This reduces the amount of stress on the fan cover and therefore increases or reduces the likelihood of it getting cracked. You'll notice a lifting strap here on the top of the motor, and all our motors ship with these straps, which is one of our customers' favorite features. The reason there is two is because we're using these threaded holes here, one on either side here, that actually that are used for the feet. Now, on this motor, what I mean by that is the feet on this motor are actually removable. There's little bolts in the side that you can take the foot off, and then you can rotate the junction box into any position. You can rotate it into an F3 or to an F2 without having to take the motor apart. You just rebolt the feet on to the other side. Now, as far as the protection, the IP protection or protection from ingress of liquids and dust is very important in the survival of the bearings on the motor. So on the exterior, we'll see a slinger with a metal skeleton so that it will press onto the shaft. Then you'll see our cast iron bearing retainers. Each one of these bolts has a special washer underneath it that's a sealing washer that keeps the seal between the bolt and the bearing retainer. Then between the bearing retainers, you'll see these gaskets. No matter how well you machine two metal parts, when you bolt them together, they're not going to be watertight. So having the gasket in there keeps any water from getting into the motor through the bearing retainers. On the interior of the bearing, you'll see this felt wiper. And the felt wiper is impregnated with oil, and it basically keeps any grease that gets pumped into the bearing from being pumped into the motor. If the grease was over-pressurized here, there's a grease drain on the bottom of the bearing retainer here to allow the grease, the excess grease, to be let out of the motor. Now, if we look at the sealing on this motor, we're going to see that there's double lip oil seals here. They're a Viton double lip oil seal, so very high temperature, chemical resistant. And it's the same on both sides of the motor. All the fits on these motors are silicon sealed. So they're sealed with a Permatex so that no water can get into the motor through this side. We really don't want you to open the motor, which is why we want to have the removable feet so that you can move the box to other locations without opening the motor, because once you do, you'll break the seal and then you'll have to fix it again. But also, we have breathers in the bottom of the motor that are used for condensation. If you were to roll this motor over into another orientation, then you'd need to move the drain to the right position so that it will drain the condensation. So what we've done, rather than have you take the motor apart, is we've added these plastic plugs. So if you were to move the motor to have an F2, then you would basically take the breather and you would move the breather into this position here, and then you would put the other plug in the bottom. So this motor is a super premium product. If you look at the nameplate, if you can possibly get a picture of the nameplate, this motor is designed to 234/60 super premium. What that means in our design is that you can also have not only the 234/60 at super premium, but is also labeled with the 200 or 208 volt at a NEMA premium, and the 50 hertz data for the European market also meeting NEMA premium requirements. Therefore, we can put all the ratings on a single motor. You don't have to worry if the motor is being installed into a location with 230 or 460 or 200. The same motor will work in any one of those conditions. The one other thing here, the bearings on these motors are both oversized. In this particular case, you'll see that this motor has been configured with the preload washer on the drive end of the motor. What that does is that it allows all the axial force on the shaft to be transferred to the bearing on the opposite side of the motor, and only the radial force is taken up by the bearing on this side. This bearing essentially is a floating bearing right now. Now, because we have dual oversized bearings, the bearing on this retainer on this end can actually be removed and switched to the back of the motor. And when that's done, it will actually shift the locking from the back into the front. So once you're locked on the drive end, then all your axial and your radial forces are taken up by the bearing in this side. And that's why you tend to get longer bearing lives if you lock it in the opposite end. However, the issue with locking it in the opposite end is that the shaft will grow from thermal growth. So if 10 to 12 thousandths of growth is a problem for your application, then you need to make sure that it's locked on the drive end, which is how they're shipped from the factory. But if you have an application where you're throwing bearings very often, shifting that locking to the other side will significantly increase your bearing life. So essentially, I think that's a basic run through of the features of the Top XR3 product. And we'll be going around and looking at all of our competitors' products and give you the insight as to James Muldoon with Tech Top Motors. We're here at the EASA 2024